Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Today is Sunday, November 15th. We are in the month of Independence. And as you can see, I'm wearing my Independence shirt here next to my good old friend and neighbor and relative, Marlon Morris, from the popular website MM Out There. Remember to follow and check out his site on YouTube as well and subscribe to MM Out There. But today we have an interesting lineup for you. I want to interview Marlon about the good old days growing up on the Gully Hill. Now in Barbados, and I don't know what part of the Caribbean you would call it, but we call it the Gully Hill. And many activities used to happen on this same Gully Hill. And Marlon is very knowledgeable as a young lad growing up around the area. He's an avid left-handed cricketer, very knowledgeable on boxing, very versed in accounting. So he's a very talented man here before me. And this one is particularly for you, Rudy, who came from this area and you wanted me to, ask some questions about Gully Hill because you know that will bring up memories for you too and everyone watching the channel. So stay tuned, and when we come back, we're going to explore the history of the Gully Hill, especially as it relates to the area of Sherman's St. Lucie. We'll be right back. So stay tuned and subscribe to my channel.
Okay, my name is Marlon Morris. Many of you may know me from seeing my show on YouTube called MM Out There. Well, as Mr. Rodney Ifill told you previously, I am from Sherman's. I grew up in this area, and it's called Sherman St. Lucie. And one of my viewers, who is called Alan Ward, this is for you because you keep saying that I'm from Crab Hill. So now you know where I live, Sherman's St. Lucie. Okay, and previously it was Sherman St. Peter actually, but Sherman St. Lucie, that's where I am now. And the Gully Hill that we're talking about is actually situated right above me. What you can see above here, despite the bush and so on, that's the Gully Hill. And that was a area where we was like a playground. And they had houses up there. Well, there are a few houses up there now, but they were sort of like chattel houses used to be up there. And it carries a legacy. It's an area where we played cricket, mango trees, you had dunks trees, you had cherry trees, golden apple trees. Basically, you have everything. The only place that could challenge that was right here, where we had a giant ackee tree, which unfortunately was cut down only this week. And this is it right here. There's a very special story that I could remember. Growing up on the Gully Hill there, we, the youngsters in this area, we discovered a cave actually. And in this cave, we found about 12 dogs, little puppies, because obviously the mother was not around. So each of us took one home. Some people took two home. Some people took three. In fact, there's one famous guy, he's very famous now in life, very popular businessman. I won't call his name. He took home four, and they all died. All the others died save one. That was the one I had. And ironically, we called it Gully. Very short dog. And its feet were shaped like a human's. Like when your feet goes on the ground, flattened like a human. It's called Gully. That dog lived for about 12, 13 years before some other dogs actually killed it. And as I said, we called it Gully because we found it on the cave, in the gully, and that's what got its nickname. But there are lots of other things about the Gully Hill that you could think about. And before it was brought over by the St. John's, who presently own it, it was an area where it was a free-for-all. We played village cricket matches up there. There's 6 lanes to the south. They would come up there and they would play against Shermans. There is Clinkets, which is to the northeast. Yes, there was kite flying, but was not kite flying like today, because we made our own kites. All kites were made from book leaves. Believe it or not, book leaves and that string that goes through a coconut branch, and you tie some string to it, like nylon or rope, a cord. You put a tail on, and that kite would actually go way, way, way up in the sky. Believe it or not. Then we advanced to having these boards, strips of board, and we'd go and buy some bread paper, which came in all sorts of colors. And we took what you call a clamacheri tree. Clamacheri, those fruits are like glue, which were in abundance on the same Gully Hill. We made kites from those, board, different designs, and again, it goes soaring into the sky. That unfortunately came to a gradual end. They invented something called a back kite, which you were able to go then and buy in Spice Town from a place called New Roach or Wallop or one of those merchants. So you didn't have to go through the activity of making a kite anymore. You just buy a back kite and put it in the air and it goes. There was also, you mentioned something about pond. I wouldn't call it a pond, but the bridges over there to the northwest of here, where I am, whenever it's rough, the sea goes under the bridge, goes over the other side, onto the same Gully Hill, and it forms what we would call a pond. Because actually fish would be in it. That's coming from the sea. Now when there's lots of rain, the water comes from the east, it flows down, and it settles right there. Again, it forms a pond. And you have all sorts of fish in it. Coming from primary school, we used to pass by that same pond, and we would take what you call a top, which is a little container, and we would capture the tadpoles that would be in the water. We dipped it and captured it. And that was fun for us. Plus, the more adventurous guys would actually hook fish from in this same pond. Also, there was an abundance of canes to the top, which is near Colleton Estate, Colleton Plantation. Canes up there, and you'd have the cuscus grass lining the canes, which you don't see anymore. You don't see any genuine or authentic cuscus grass anymore.
Only dogs feeding the dogs dunks and all sorts of things.
But this is what I want to point out. You have the cuscus grass here, the end of the canes, the rows, but in between here, water will settle. And believe it or not, they will have fish in that water. Now, this is nowhere near the sea. We have fish, actually fish in that water like big this size. Some people like we would never eat them, but you have people like from St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and they used to actually eat these things. Because at that time you had these guys coming in from the Windward Islands and Leeward Islands, mostly Windward Islands, to cut canes, right, to provide labor. And some of them would actually stay on here and make their home here. And they had different habits and what we would call peculiar habits. So that's something that they would do. Mr. Ifill, you also mentioned about the older folk who used to live up there obviously would have passed on. I can actually vividly remember there was a guy called Bridger Skeet. He was sort of like what you would call, he used to make furniture and so on. And his wife, little short guy, and he had a daughter or some relative of his, very, very good friend of mine called Marceline Skeet. And I'm saying hi to Marceline because I haven't seen Marceline in so many years. Then there was a lady would call Grethel. She used to live right at the very top, right next door to the cane field. Which, and I'll tell you something of the cane field. Every year, these canes used to burn, catch a fire. And her house is like just a few feet away from this cane field. And whenever there was a cane fire, it was a spectacular sight. It's not like today. A cane fire was an event, a big event. You'd have people from First State, Chuck Hall, husbands, coming to stand up and watch the canes burning. Spikes down, 6 men. Believe it or not, they just come and watch the canes burning like that. They're a spectacular event. I'm watching the firemen actually trying to put the fire out. So those are things that you don't see anymore, but there are no canes there anymore anyhow. But you never see these sort of things anymore, but it brings back nostalgia. Another thing I can remember as a youngster is just above the same Gully Hill, but it's in relation to the Gully Hill, but it's just above. There was a guy who lost his life. There's a tractor. They're plowing the potato field. So they have these giant blades that actually plow the field behind the tractor. So these group of guys were jumping on the tractor. No, that's fun for them. They're having a ride. The driver, he keeps telling them, get off, get off, get off. Eventually he gets them off. This guy jumps back on. So the guy is driving. You know the tractor's keeping a lot of noise. He actually falls into these blades. And it chopped him like to pieces. And I saw that with my own eyes. Well, I didn't see it happen, but I saw him dead. My grandmother actually took me up there because I came home from school for lunch. And at that time, anytime something major happened, it used to come on in the form of a news flash. You hear beep, 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 news flash, news flash. So I'm having my lunch and it says news flash. They tell you about this thing that just happened about like 5 minutes ago. So she grabs me up over the Gully Hill to see this unfortunate and tragic accident. That is a sad memory that I would remember about the same Gully Hill. You asked about the animals that were up there. Besides the dogs, because you had the dogs, you had sheep, cows, goats, that sort of thing. You have the perennial monkeys and mongoose. We used to catch mongoose in traps. Okay? We used to catch them in traps. And this may sound evil, but it's something that we did, not knowing the difference at that time. We would catch mongoose. We would throw kerosene oil on them in the cage. Take a match, throw it in the cage, and open the cage. And watch them running well on fire. Another thing we would do, we'd have these big dogs. And I know that Christopher Robinson, Mr. Christopher Robinson, who's a dog freak, would like this. We would take the dogs on the beach with the mongoose in the cage. On the sand, release the mongoose in front of the dogs. And you know, the mongoose is going to run, but it can't run that fast on the sand because its feet are going to be moving, but it's not really going anywhere. So eventually it's going to be caught by these dogs, and they would actually tear from end to end and like rip it to pieces. Those are the sort of things that we did, which I'm not proud of, but at that time it was fun. We also did the same thing to monkeys. We take, not on the beach, we'd put her on the same Gully Hill in a cage, if you catch one, open it, and let it battle with the dogs. It would put up some fierce resistance for a time, but eventually it would be defeated and slaughtered. Okay? And that's my memories of animals that would be up here. Oh, and birds. We used to catch birds. We had this sort of sticky substance that you don't see it around anymore. It would grow on the ground. It's something that when the birds step on it, it would stick to their wings and so on, then they can't move. So we would put them some what you call scratch grain. Put it there, they would come to eat the scratch grain. So while they're walking around eating the scratch grain, they're collecting these things on them. Right? So then when they're ready to move, they can't move because they're stuck down, and we capture them. We mostly do it to doves because they were in abundance. We call wood doves. And we would capture them. Some people used to eat them. but we used to capture them for fun. Also, we had what we call a fly stick, which is a device we made with a stick, a loop at the bottom, where we would put, which is triggered. If you step on this thing, it snap and it will catch it, the pigeons and the birds. So they go eating the scratch green. So while moving around eating the scratch green, they would step on this cord, it would snap and catch them. We also had bees. Right above the Gully Hill, there were beehives. And we used to actually go into the gully, because it's called the Gully Hill, so the gully right above, and capture, well, not capture, because there's nothing to capture, and get honey from the fresh honey, authentic honey from the bees. Of course, at your own risk, because if they return home and catch you, you know you end up, you might see a guy with his eyes closed, swollen, all his face swollen, his arms swollen, because he was trying to get honey, and the bees unfortunately came back home, because they used to go out and they come back, and they attacked him. So that's how we used to know if you actually caught stealing honey.
Great. So for you, last two questions. Tell us what you think you got to hear.
From my own investigations, it's called the Gully Hill because it's below the gully. The gully is right there, and that gully goes way up to Fast Lake. Way up to Fast Lake. So you come into the gully where, ironically, there was a guy who used to live in a cave up there. We used to call him King Gully. And this cave was furnished with everything that you would actually see in a home. I don't mean like television and so on. I'm talking like chairs, photos, and in a cave. King Gully used to live in this cave. So that's why we used to call him King Gully. And we were actually scared of him. Because a guy who's living in a cave would obviously have to be an insane person, or who we would call a madman. But anyhow, the gully, the hill. So you say the Gully Hill. From my investigations, that's how it got its name, the Gully Hill.
The answer is that in terms of the disconnectivity, bike don't allow you to know about half the things that you recall. So what advice and closing up you got for these people?
Mr. Ifill, my advice will fall on deaf ears. It's like water on a duck's back, as far as I'm concerned. The youngsters today have become so disconnected with the telephones, the computers, and so on, that look, if a bus should stop there now, everyone in that bus, if you look carefully, they're on the phone. The youngsters have no time for that sort of thing, right? You ask a youngster what's a fly stick, he doesn't know. A youngster doesn't know how to make a kite. The things that I'm talking about, those things that you catch, they don't know about worries, the paws that you play with the worry game, that grow in the same gully. They don't know about those things. So I know it's a good question, but I'm too disgusted to answer that question. Because they won't take my advice, so I'm not going to answer that question. I don't see any sense in it. And that's coming from me.